Prime-time local news, serving the Lakeland and Midwest regions.
Hello and welcome to Primetime Local News. My name is Randy Cormish and thank you for joining us. The French culture is not one well represented throughout the border city. In this week's Beyond the Classroom, we see École St. Thomas celebrate their French heritage, hosting Viva le Carnaval.
Viva le Carnaval is an annual week-long event hosted by École St. Thomas Elementary, showcasing French culture while getting these students engaged in learning.
With our school being the only French immersion school in the city, it's important for us to bring the French culture alive for our students so that they not only learn to read, write, and speak in French, but also how to live French as well.
The Carnival has a wide range of events planned for the week, starting with opening ceremonies on Monday, followed by the students taking part in skating games, as well as making some delicious treats.
One of our big hits is Bonhomme Carnaval, this guy here beside me. We also have La Tire, which is maple syrup on snow that the students really enjoy.
With the main highlight being maple syrup on snow, the students are still taking away lots about French history.
Bonhomme is the mascot for the Carnaval de Québec. So we had our mascot brought to us to celebrate our Carnaval here in Lloydminster. He's unique to our school, and he's been a mascot of the Carnaval de Québec for decades and decades.
And that's all for this week's edition of Beyond the Classroom.
This is your classroom. Hands-on learning like you've never seen.
Rendell Park Elementary celebrated their 100th day of school today in Lloydminster. Projects were displayed that students put together for the 100th day. Other activities included finding 100 words around the school and many other things to keep the kids having fun.
We have centers set up that are all about the number 100. In grade 1, the curriculum says we need to be able to deal with numbers up to 100, so it's the perfect day to celebrate. We're counting, we're sorting, we're building necklaces and snack bags and crowns. It's amazing.
Schools give students a great chance to interact with other students and also partake in fun activities like the 100th day of school.
Parents are their first teachers, but we are their second home. And it's just such a great place to be able to celebrate how hard these littles work and how much they learn in grade 1.
The 100 day of school celebration even got a student believing in the Toronto Maple Leafs and their pursuit of the Stanley Cup. Lloydminster has been on the receiving end of a few extreme cold warnings lately. Arlene Hoffert sat down with a meteorologist to discuss what weather we can expect for the rest of the month.
I'm joined here today with Peter Quinlan, who's a meteorologist with Global News Saskatoon. So Peter, why don't you just tell me about the kind of weather we can expect for the rest of February?
So it looks like the next week is going to be very cold right through into the middle of next week, which for some is reading weekend. Yeah, it is going to be kind of the situation where we have minus 20 daytime highs, minus 30 overnight lows, or around kind of the minus 30 mark, and morning wind chills around that extreme cold warning criteria of minus 40 or colder right through into the middle of next week.
So you mentioned this reading week coming up, and of course it's the long weekend for lots of people. Can you tell me about the kind of conditions drivers can expect and what they can do to stay safe on the road?
Driving wise, we should be mostly okay. The roads are a little bit icy. We don't really have any major snowfalls expected. It's just kind of maybe a few light flurries here or there. It's just really the cold you're going to have to contend with. So if your vehicle does break down, you want to make sure you have a winter emergency kit handy, blankets, ways to stay warm, and some food as well.
And we're nearing the tail end of winter now. The days are getting much longer, which is always nice to see. Can you tell me what kind of spring we can expect to have?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of people want to know, when's it going to warm up? Is it going to warm up? Well, it will potentially in the last week of February, and even by the end of next week, we'll start to see a bit of a warm up. It's a little early to say exactly how March will pan out. It may end up being colder than average throughout the kind of middle period as we approach spring. So it does look like we'll stay with a colder than normal trend. That said, though, we've been well below normal by almost 10 degrees, which is almost unheard of. Lloydminster normal high is -7 for this time of year, kind of an average temperature in the -13 range. And so far this February, we've been at -22. So that is quite a lot below normal. And it does look like we'll stick with this below normal trend temperature-wise into March, and then potentially getting to some above average conditions this summer.
All right, and what role does wind play in giving us these colder than average days?
Yeah, so it doesn't take much of a breeze when our temperatures are around the -30 mark to make it feel 10 to 15 degrees colder than the raw air temperature. It's what we call wind chill, and basically when it's windy or you're creating your own wind chill, it swipes away this warm insulating layer of air that warms just outside of your skin, and that gives us a colder perceived temperature than the actual raw temperature would be. So even though we've been seeing those overnight lows in the Lloydminster area around that -29, -30 mark, even with just a 15 or so kilometer per hour breeze, that's feeling more like the mid -30s toward the -40. So it is significant, and it can be quite serious. If you get frostbite, that can result in frozen skin and the need for amputation.
All right, and my last question for you is, do you have any tips on beating the cold?
Yeah, so it's very important to make sure you're bundling up on these extremely cold days with no exposed skin, even your face, wearing a balaclava. Of course, the toucan mitts, your ears are extra vulnerable, your fingers as well. So those little hot packs can be helpful in your mitts and your shoes or your boots if you are out for an extended period of time. Take it very seriously if you're saying going out skiing. Even your cheeks are vulnerable, so take breaks indoors if you are able to do that, and try not to be out for prolonged periods of time. Check in on those who are extra vulnerable, especially in this extreme cold prolonged period.
Those are all the questions I have for you today. Thank you for joining me, Peter.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Layton.
We'll have more primetime local news after the break. AgriVisions has now filled up the Lloydminster exhibition with great vendors from all aspects of the agriculture world.
What is going to do is it's going to tighten supplies in the U.S. and therefore their prices are going to increase.
Early this morning, speakers and vendors were open for business to share their knowledge about the agriculture industry, and attendance has been great.
Fantastic. We've had a tremendous turnout considering that it's been a little bit cold. Some people in the ag industry have more responsibilities at home when the temperature's as low as it is, and we're thankful that as many were able to make it this morning as have. And speakers that we've had so far have been very, very well attended and very informative.
With the event being around for more than 30 years, the organizers have a blueprint of success that they will continue to use for years to come.
Pretty much dialed in to a model that we've kind of followed the last few years, and you know, we've been trying to maximize the exposure for our exhibitors and make sure that we can, you know, fit as many different organizations in as possible. We're not changing a whole bunch moving forward. It's more just about building and the experience for the exhibitors and for our attendees as we kind of move on through the show.
The trade show will once again be open tomorrow at 10 a.m. for all attendees to enjoy. A former professional golfer turned author has released another book. As Stacey Calmer found out, it's part of an ongoing fiction series with no signs of coming to an end anytime soon.
I have a very special guest joining me today, all the way from Georgia. John Mahaffey is here. Some of you may know John for his golf game, but we're actually going to be chatting about something different today. But before I get into that, John, thanks so much for joining me.
Stacey, thank you. It's my pleasure.
Well, let's chat about your background, because a lot of people will know you from your history with golf and winning a number of golf tournaments, including some of the big ones. So tell me a little bit about your history with the sport of golf before we get into the other side of things.
Well, actually, you're in Calgary, right? Are you outside of Calgary?
We're in Lloydminster, so more closer to Edmonton.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, my professional golf career almost started in Canada. Ben Hogan was my mentor, and I had not. I'd played a U.S. Open as an amateur, and then I'd played in a tournament in Fort Worth, the Colonial, on a sponsor's exemption that he got for me. and he made arrangements for me to come up before I went to the PGA Tour school to come up to Canada and play and start in Winnipeg and play west all the way to Vancouver. So I'm very familiar with the Canadian golfers and the golf courses, and really thoroughly enjoyed that. I had a chance to play with one of your most famous golfers, Mo Norman, a couple of times. Yeah, George Knudson, Dave Barr, and Dan Halderson, and a lot of folks up there. So Canada's got a warm place in my heart.
And you did go on to win a PGA championship as well, correct?
I did. I won the PGA championship and the Players. So a couple of nice little feathers in your cap, I guess you'd say. Fortunate enough to win both of them.
Well, and now today we're not talking about golf at all. We're talking about your second career, which is as an author, John. And I'm very intrigued. The series of books, a lot of it based on cybercrime. The latest one out is called Hoodwinked, and this is a series that you're doing. So how do you switch from golf to, I mean, I know you wrote a book about golf, but then to get into this type of writing and get a whole series based around cybercrime?
Well, actually, what happened, Stacy, is I played the PGA Tour and then played the Champions Tour for a while, and I had some hip issues that were actually from a birth defect I never really knew about. So I was playing on borrowed time. So during that period of time, I had to quit playing golf. So luckily, the Golf Channel came around to offer me a deal. So I was with them for like 15 years. And during that period, as an announcer, live golf. So we did a tournament up in Calgary, by the way, at the Shaw Classic and stuff. I did that for many years. But then it reached a point where I felt like I'd had enough travel and I really wanted to stay home. My wife had some issues with diabetes, and I was looking for another way to reinvent myself. All right. And I'd written a book, nonfiction, called Hogan's Boy, A Journey in Golf. And I put that out, and not a long book, but it was my experiences with Ben Hogan and Arnold Palmer, Nicholas Trevino, all the guys that I was lucky enough to play with. And I thought, that was nice, but I really wanted to write fiction. I had gone to South Africa in 1979. Calvin Pete and I went over there. We'd both won tournaments. I'd won the Players. I'd won the PGA, sorry. And he'd won a whole mess of tournaments. Anyway, we went over there and played for a month, but we played the tournaments on bookends. We played it in Johannesburg to start out with, and then Cape Town, and in between went to a game park called Timbavati. Well, there wasn't anything to do, really. There wasn't any TV, radio, hardly anything over there at Timbavati for entertainment. So there was a writer that somebody told me about by the name of Wilbur Smith, who was a fictional historical writer over there that had a couple of series, the Ballantine series and the Courtney series. And anyway, I got all of his books that I could find. And I fell in love with the way he wrote, because he intertwined all the stuff of these families and all their issues along with the history of South Africa. And I thought, what a wonderful way to write. And so I hadn't written Hogan's Boy at that point. And but after that, after I decided to start doing something, I wanted to do fiction, because I think it gave me a chance to be creative, a great way to reinvent yourself. And it's and cathartic as well. You can kill people if you want to in these things and not feel guilty about it, So that's how I got started in it. And I based the Nemesis series, is what it's called, on a family and how they grow, and the saga of the McCall family, how they almost lose everything because of a manager that tried to take care of a kid that was too naive, and got them behind the 8 ball where they almost lost everything. And that's how they started Nemesis, and how Nemesis grew to be a cyber crime fighting organization worldwide. And it goes all over the world. I mean, we're talking mafia, we're talking everything. Big pharma, little pharma, everything.
Well, this latest book then, is this the end of the series, or is this part of it's going to keep going?
It's going to continue. My suggestion for people that are interested in reading the series is to start from the first. Mm-hmm. The first book is called Shafted. The second one, Unfinished Business. The third, Dead Quiet. The fourth is Blindsided. And the fifth is Hoodwinked. And I'm about a third of the way through. The sixth book, which I have named right now, is what do I have it named? I've changed the name. I haven't come up with a final name yet, but open season is what it's called right now, but we'll see if that sticks. But I don't know that I'm going to stop writing these things. I'm loving it. It's great. It's fun. Um, I'll be 77 on my next birthday in May. And I feel like it keeps me young. It keeps my mind active, something to look forward to every day. And hopefully it's very entertaining for the readers and keeps them guessing.
Well, John, it's incredible just to see what you've done. And I don't know how you get the inspiration to keep writing all of these books, and good for you for doing it. Because when you think of the work that goes into writing a book, a lot of people, I don't think, realize how much it is to actually, just get the ideas, and then you got to go through the editing and the publishing and all of that stuff too. And to keep going and to keep the characters going and have that up in your mind, all these ideas, that's just awesome. I really appreciate you chatting with me today. And if people are looking to find your books, John, what is the best way to do that?
The best way to do it, well, you can go to Amazon right now. I have a website called johnmahaffeyauthor.com, but we're kind of refurbishing that a little bit right now because I'm writing books quicker than they can keep up. So, but basically, if you go to Amazon, you can find them there under John Mahaffey.
Awesome. Well, again, John, thank you so much for chatting with me. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to the continuing books in this series.
Thank you very much. Nice to be with you. Hope to do it again sometime.
That's all for now. Let's take a look at your closing market.
Today's oil prices are brought to you by First General Services.
Going through divorce or separation at any age is difficult, but can be especially so when you are older. Stacey Comer has more on Gray Divorce.
It's that time of the week where Stephanie Dobson joins us. Stephanie is a lawyer, mediator, and online educator with Hanka Divorce Law and Mediation, offices in Edmonton and here in Lloydminster. Stephanie, thank you for joining me today.
Nice to see you as always, Stacey.
Stephanie, last week we were talking about what it was like for going through the divorce and separation process if you are younger. You've just had a relationship, maybe a few years. We're going to reverse it this week now and go to the other end of the scale where we're going to be talking about gray divorce. So Stephanie, can you first just explain a little bit about what gray divorce is?
Sure. Some people might feel insulted by calling it gray divorce because it's basically couples who are separating later in life, often after the age of 50. So some people at the age of 50 say, wait a second, it's not gray yet. But, it's for those parents who have children who are almost out of the home or who have already left. And, according to many research studies, the divorce rates for those ages 50 and older has really doubled since the 1990s.
And what are some of the reasons behind gray divorce, Stephanie? You think sometimes you get to a certain age and you're just like, oh, whatever, I'm just settling in, I've married 30, 40 years and that's it. So why do people, are they tending to separate or divorce at a later age?
So these are just some of my ideas of perhaps some of the reasons why there might be more gray divorce. I think one of them is changing expectations. Many people change their perspectives on marital happiness. If their personal fulfillment is not being met, individuals may seek it elsewhere. They may feel empowered. Another one is empty nest syndrome. Sometimes once your kids are now out of the house, you realize that your marital relationship has been more about parenting than about partnership. And then you start to reevaluate. Longer lifespan might be another one. So with advances in healthcare, of course, people are living longer. And as a result, people are reevaluating their life choices and seeking more meaningful connections later in life. And the last one that I thought of was more about financial independence. So more women and men are financially independent than ever before. And so it's making it easier to leave unsatisfactory marriages.
What are some things that you should consider when you are getting divorced older in life as compared to younger?
You know, when people divorce before they're in their 50s or earlier in life, including in their 20s, what we talked about last week, you know, there's very different considerations. Usually you're focusing on how to raise your children in two homes, how to cooperate for the sake of your children, how to divide your property so that you can start over in life, technically, and, you know, start to build up your net worth once again. But when people separate later in life after the age of 50, often their priorities change. Maybe the children are already out of the house, maybe they're even in post-secondary or done post-secondary, and couples may be thinking more closer to retirement thoughts than building their career. So here's a few things to consider, and of course it's by no means an exhaustive list. One is estate planning. So often we want to look at how couples want to see their accumulated wealth be passed on to their children. Retirement planning. So rather than looking at how you'll ramp up your career, often couples at this stage are looking at how they're going to be able to retire within a defined period of time. So it's a really good idea to start talking with a financial advisor and start to look at, when you're considering certain settlement proposals, how does that fit in with the grander scale, grander scheme, I should say, of your retirement plans. And then third is insurance plans. So as the years progress, of course, insurance becomes even harder to obtain. So, you know, you might want to talk about how do we want to preserve the life insurance as opposed to trying to get new life insurance plans.
What are some things that people who are divorcing later in life should be thinking about when it comes to their adult children? You talked about empty nest syndrome, the kids are out of the house. So if the kids are adults, are there still things that you should be considering when going through a gray divorce?
You know, that's a really good question, because there's lots of clients who come in to me and they say, you know, my kids are over the age of 18. We don't need to talk about them at all. And in fact, there are so many things that need to be talked about after the age of 18. So, you know, a lot of times people want to talk about what do they do when their kids have already left home. In a way, it's harder sometimes for kids over the age of 18 because they now lose their home base. So mom and dad are moving into two homes, and the kids are having a hard time figuring out, where is home for me? You know, when I come home from university or when I come home for Thanksgiving, what does that look like? So it's really important to ensure that you have open dialogue with children over the age of 18 so that they feel supported, and really so that they know that you know that it really does still affect them, but just in a different way.
All right, Stephanie, well, great information as always. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll be back to talk to you again next week.
Thanks, Stacey.
The number of private vehicles that were stolen dropped by nearly 19% last year. A Montreal insurance company reports that more than 57,000 vehicles were stolen in 2024, down from more than 70,000 in 2023. The report gives much of the credit to the federal government's National Audio Theft Action Plan and urged Ottawa to move on promised updates to anti-theft regulations. Now we will take a look at your adorable pets with our Pets of the Day.
Send photos of your pet and their name to have them featured on Pet of the Day.
Thank you for joining us. My name is Randy Cormish, and have a great rest of your day.